Welcome to Saturday Morning Trek, just one of many podcasts on Trek FM. If you'd like to help keep Star Trek discussion coming your way, consider becoming a patron of the network through Patreon. Visit patreon.com/trekfm and find out how you can become part of the team. That's patreon.com/trekfm.
This is Walter Koenig, Chekhov from Star Trek, and you're listening to Trek FM.
Farrah Fawcett Majors guest stars on the $6 Million Man.
Now you can play Star Trek with a Star Treculator, a digital calculator that never makes a mistake.
Ceremony called the Space Shuttle, the key to man's future in space. This is a machine that can fly in space and land on runways like an airplane.
Welcome to Saturday Morning Trek 70 Supplemental, Discovering Planet of the Titans. This past Saturday at San Diego Comic-Con, we got a glimpse of the first Star Trek on television in 12 years. We learned that the story would be told like a novel, chapter by chapter. It'll be progressive and continue to push boundaries, and will be set in the Prime timeline. We were also treated to a brief test flight of what the hero ship will be, the USS Discovery, headed out from a base of operations inside of an asteroid. And then, in painfully predictable fashion, Star Trek fans lost it. They hate everything. The name, the music, the ship. Oh, the prophets, the ship! The USS Discovery has a triangular engineering hull, almost like an angular Starfleet Delta, with some flat retro-style TNG nacelles, and attached to an engineering hull by a long sloping neck is a mostly standard saucer section, with some detailing reminiscent of the USS Franklin from the new Star Trek Beyond. At certain angles, it almost looks like an IDIC symbol. While fans were calling for its digital bits to be completely deleted, as the host of a podcast about Star Trek in the 1970s, I was jumping up and down with glee as I saw in front of me one of the most indelible images of my young Starlog reading youth come to life right in front of me. I know, you're wondering, what am I talking about? I'm talking about the concept for an Enterprise redesign that was from a never-made movie called Star Trek: Planet of the Titans. Here's a brief history of that era and time. We'll be going into much more depth with it as soon as we've completed the animated series. In May of 1975, 7 months after the animated series was canceled, Gene Roddenberry moved back into his old office at Paramount and began writing a Star Trek movie called The God Thing. It was supposed to begin filming July 15th, 1976. The short description of the movie was that God was a malfunctioning starship. For a secular humanist, this idea of God came up a lot in Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek. But science fiction that questioned the existence of God wasn't what the nervous executives at Paramount were really looking for. So, after 2 months, The God Thing was dead. But the idea of bringing Star Trek to the big screen was not. By July 1976, what would have been the start of principal photography on The God Thing, the idea of a Star Trek movie was back on track, in part after NASA named the test space shuttle after the Enterprise, and it was christened by the cast and crew on live TV. To get the creative ball rolling, Gene invited his assistant, John Pavel, to write a script treatment. He also engaged other writers such as Robert Silverberg, Harlan Ellison, and Ray Bradbury. The common theme among all the stories? Time travel.
Time travel. Since my first day on the job as the Starfleet captain, I swore I'd never let myself get caught in one of these godforsaken paradoxes. The future is the past is the future. It all gives me a headache.
By October of '76, there was a 20-page outline for Planet of the Titans. The description from Memory Alpha is as follows. Set after the 5-year mission depicted in the series, the film involves Starfleet competing with Klingons to claim the supposed homeworld of the mythical Titans, a technologically advanced race long thought extinct. As the planet is pulled into a black hole, the USS Enterprise must face off against the Cygnans, the alien race responsible for the disappearance of the Titans. Ultimately, Captain Kirk is forced to take the Enterprise into the black hole and defeat the Cygnans, a decision that sends the Enterprise and its crew backwards in time thousands of years and into orbit around Earth. After introducing fire to primitive humans living at the time, Kirk and his crew are revealed to be the legendary Titans. And I can hear you now. Prime Directive, anyone? Yeah, the Temporal Investigation Committee would not be happy. Based on the treatment, Paramount executives gave the green light and commissioned a script. With the budget set at an estimated $7.5 million, about $32 million today, designer Ken Adam, who designed the classic villain's lair in Goldfinger and Thunderball, as well as the War Room in Dr. Strangelove, and illustrator Ralph McQuarrie, fresh off the soon-to-be-released Star Wars, was brought in to help redesign the Enterprise for the big screen. The Enterprise was originally sketched out very dynamically by Adam and then more methodically by McQuarrie. Much like what we saw in the test flight trailer with the Discovery, the refit Enterprise had a triangular engineering hull with the flat end of the triangle the back and the pointed end the front. Many people later compared it to the Star Destroyer McQuarrie also designed. The warp nacelles, depending on which drawing you saw, were either lower and closer to the engineering hull, like the Discovery, or higher and above the saucer, and looked not quite balanced properly. McQuarrie did several illustrations, not based on the screenplay that was being developed, but just interesting locations. This included the Enterprise leaving an asteroid base, incorrectly credited to Star Trek the Motion Picture and Starlog in 1978. This base is nearly identical, even down to the running lights of the configuration that we saw in the Discovery trailer. Several small study models of the redesigned Enterprise were created during the project's short life. 2 made an appearance in Star Trek productions. First in Space Dock in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. Next, in the Starship Graveyard scene in the aftermath of the Battle of Wolf 359 in TNG, Best of Both Worlds Part 2, and the Surplus Depot Z-15 in TNG's Unification Part 1. But Planet of the Titans was not meant to be. Eventually, the second script was also rejected by Paramount. Believing Star Wars was just a fluke, Paramount decided to send Star Trek back to television. Star Trek II, or what we know as Star Trek Phase 2, or possibly it was just Star Trek. That's the interesting thing about this part of Star Trek history. Depending on who you talk to or who wrote what notes, you can get entirely different stories. It's almost like there are several timelines in existence at once. So let's keep our reactions to the new TV show measured. The basic design for the Discovery has just been approved. They had 5 days to put together a very rough model and motion study test. And much like the foam core and wood model of the 1970s, this digital model is a study model. The design has permutations yet to go, and the rough, almost old-fashioned render quality is not indicative of what the visual effects will be. Remember, principal photography hasn't even started yet, so these concept designs are just that, concepts. If this was 1976, you'd be getting sketches. And disco. So, thanks for joining us on our first Saturday Morning Trek supplemental. Stay groovy.
Wednesday on The Bionic Woman.
Steve is dying. Now, he told me that you, or your people, have some kind of a wonder drug? Yes.
Bigfoot returns, and Jamie Summers fights for her life.
This time she won't escape.
The $6 Million Man guest stars on The Bionic Woman.